For the listeners and people watching, it's really your last name is Dergazarian.
Dergazarian, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I know that you're a neurologist and a physician coach. And like I said, I have a few points that I'd like to go over with you. We were talking about this off camera. But before we get into it, I'd like to know what led you into, being a neurologist and, eventually coaching professionals or specifically physicians.
So, in terms of what led me to neurology, I kind of took a roundabout path to medicine to begin with. So, it was never clear cut for me that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I was actually moving more towards research and epidemiology. So, I became a research assistant. I was working with a physician in a hospital. And I realized, you know what? Like, actually, if I want to make an impact one on one, it's going to be through medicine, not through research. So research is a lot like population level, because I wanted to do epidemiology, population level impact, but I really appreciate the one on one. So that's why I went into medicine in the end. I also had a roundabout way to neurology. I applied for many different specialties, actually, went into internal medicine, and from there switched into neurology. And the reason for neurology was the detail of the exam, of the history of the interaction with the patient. I'm very detail oriented, and I felt that that fit more with who I was. And also the quality of the interaction, probably because it's a more detailed history and a more detailed exam. So I really liked the interaction with the patients in neurology. Coaching is like several years fast forward from that. I think, again, what interests me most is the power of conversation, the power of questions, the power of making, like shedding old perspectives after a few questions from someone. And so coaching, I feel like really does that. And it does that in a way that as a physician, that's not my role. My role is, right now I see mainly migraine. So my role is, well, how can we lessen the impact of the migraine, let's say, on your life, treatments and lifestyle changes, etc. But that power of the conversation of the question is really what actually like it's my passion. So, yeah.
That's interesting, and for most of us who we hear about life coaches and different types of professional coaches, right? And I'm not a health professional, so I can't really fathom exactly what a physician coach does, right? So, what is physician coaching? I mean, to anyone just watching this or listening to this, and they're thinking, "Great, you're a coach, but I'm not sure what that means." Like, can you break it down for us?
Yes, of course. So thanks for asking that. Yes, coaching is like coaching. People often think that it's like sports coaching. Obviously, that's like the most immediate idea that comes to their mind. So physician coaching is essentially just coaching physicians, right? So coaching in general, what it means is unlike like in sports coaching where the coach watches you, tells you, listen, you do this well, you do here, you have to change your strategy. This is what I recommend. Let's work on it, and gives you constant feedback and tells you what to do. This type of coaching is non-directive. So you don't tell the patient what to do. In fact, during our training, we're really taught that you're not supposed to give advice at all. Even if the coachee, the client is asking for advice, you have to address that and not give advice. Okay, so it's non-directive. The other thing about coaching is that unlike mentoring and consulting, where the mentor is considered, to be the expert in terms of experience, so the mentor has been through whatever you're doing, but has been doing it for years and can give you advice. And the consultant, someone like you, Uzziel, who goes through everything, reads everything, knows all the different products really well, all the details, and can then tailor their recommendations based on, your specific situation. A consultant, again, is directive and expert driven. Mentoring also is advice and experience driven, but still directive. Coaching, the expertise is, I feel like saying there's no expertise in the sense that yes, you need to know how to use a coaching framework 100%. However, the coach does not need to be an expert in your topic. Okay? So, in fact, the premise of coaching is that the client is the expert. Okay? The client is the expert in their own life, right?
Yeah.
And so the coach is there, and their expertise, if you want, is to be able to use the coaching framework to guide, to catalyze change in the client. So that's very abstract.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's very interesting because I would never have imagined it that way. Because when it's like you said, we think about sports coaching, and you need someone to guide you towards achieving a specific goal. So when your clients, who are predominantly physicians, come to you for coaching, they sometimes come to you for, what, my career path, there's so much burnout, maybe the demands of the hospitals and the clinics or whatever it is, and just a lifestyle balance, and they're not sure if they should continue in that career path or whatever it is that something that they come to you for advice in terms of just so much burnout, I'm not sure what to do, maybe I want to quit being a physician, you know
Hmm.
is that
Hmm.
something that you a use case that you deal with?
Yes, so I think there's a lot of elements that came out in what you said. First of all, coaching is goal oriented. So coaching is this is where we are now, and this is where you want to be, where this is where I want to be as a client, and how do I get there? And so the coaching is a tool to catalyze, like that's what I like to say, it accelerates you achieving your goal. So it's definitely goal oriented, but the way you achieve the goal is very different from mentoring and consulting. Now, in terms of the reasons physicians seek out coaching, so burnout can be one of them. However, I would say that my rule of thumb is if you're drowning, if you're barely surviving, in general, coaching is not for you. So if you're drowning, you're barely surviving, you need other types of help. And, you can easily call the Programme d'aide aux médecins du Québec, the Quebec Physicians Help Program, or whatever help program within your province. And so to be able to do coaching, my rule of thumb is you need to be at least have some ability to thrive. You can't just be surviving because coaching is work. It's about changing your habits, it's about changing your mindset. And so, yes, that's definitely something we can work towards. So, let's say you're afraid you're going to burn out because you find your career less fulfilling. So I want to make changes in my life to avoid burning out or to avoid losing all meaning in my work. So that can be a goal for like the coaching partnership. And then each session we talk about something. Or it has happened. Yes, I'm like, for example, I can't do this anymore. I've been thinking for 10 years about leaving medicine. I think I'm ready and I want to like just make sure, for example, I want to find out if this is really what I want to do. Do I want to take this leap or not?
Okay, so that is interesting. Do you have like a specific, example without getting into names? Just not a specific example. The majority of the clients that you get to see, are you able to just gauge us in terms of the type of coaching that they come to you for? Is it typically career change, or just, what, I want to get into a specialty and this is a goal. As you said, your coaching is goal oriented. So
Mhm.
this is a goal that I'm trying to achieve, but I'm not sure of the execution process. So can you guide me? So I'm just looking to see if what majority of your clients tend to ask for.
So, like I said, I'm kind of a detail-oriented person. So
Okay.
it's sometimes hard for me I can't sometimes see the forest for the trees. So every person in my mind is like unique. But if I kind of try and categorize, I would say there's the confidence. I need more confidence. And that can be, so I have and still do coach non-physicians as well.
Okay.
So could be managers, engineers. And so sometimes it's a question of, I want to develop my confidence slash, imposter syndrome, work on, the imposter syndrome. There are some who say, and I'm going to lump these together, but it's like seeing things negatively, being very hard on yourself, and recovering from a mistake. Okay, so, I'm still going through the motions and going through my day, but, this mistake is still weighing down on me and I need to move forward or I need to make decisions about my career. So getting out of negativity, I'll frame it that way.
Okay.
Then there are, physician leaders who have multiple tasks. They don't only have clinical tasks. And it's a question of it's a very practical thing. It's how do I manage all the workload that I have? How do I delegate better? Leadership skills. How do I have difficult conversations with colleagues or people who are who I'm leading? And then yes, there are the personal ones too, which is be uh, I have to admit, I see the personal less because people tend to come for more professional things. But, like let's say communication or relationship things to work on.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm asking very specific questions here, and specific and general at the same time. And you just said you're very detail oriented, so it's hard to categorize the type of clients that you see. Do you ever get a case where it's a physician comes to you and the help that they're looking for is not exactly what you do? So maybe it's a question of maybe speak with your family doctor so you can get a referral for a psychiatrist or a therapist. Have you had that before, given that kind of recommendation to the professional?
Yes, yes. So, um, I have two main referral bases. One of them is the Quebec Physicians Help Program, and one of them is called Physicians Anonymous. .org actually. That's a good resource, by the way. Sometimes the people who come to see if coaching is for them, I have to say, I think you're not ready for coaching. I think what you need now, what I would highly recommend is to see your family physician to discuss options for mental health, essentially. Yes. So that does happen definitely. Coaching is not for everyone, right? And so, yes, I have told people that I think they need alternate resources. Another time people need alternate resources is when really all they want is advice. So if they're not there in order to go through a change process, if they're not there to really work on themselves in order to change their lives, but they want information or advice, that's not appropriate for coaching. So then I would say, well, I think what you're seeking is mentoring or consulting, and
Okay.
that would, yeah.
Interesting. So if I have, let me paint a quick picture here. So someone comes to you and say, "Hey, I'm an assistant. I work for this company, and I have a science degree and whatever, and I'm not sure that I feel fulfilled doing what I'm doing, and I'm also not sure what to look for. So I'm not happy in my professional life or professional career, I should say, and so I don't even know what goal to set for myself. All I know is I'm not happy where I am professionally, and I'd like to be able to explore my horizons. I'd like to be able to just move forward or find a specific career path that I can follow. I just have no idea what the steps are to take. So what would you say to someone? First of all, is that a use case for you? Is that a client that you would see? And secondly, what would be I'm just trying to gauge how you approach those kind of clients.
Yes, so I think that's very pertinent for coaching. So the way the coaching partnership works, first of all, is that typically not only myself, I think this is just coaches in general, we have like a first call that can be 15, 20 minutes just to see, first of all, to explain how coaching is and to get a sense of what they want to work on and if it's a fit, okay, just in terms of, personality, whatever. Then the typically a coaching partnership is 6 sessions. It can be longer, it doesn't really matter. Let's just say six. And the first session is devoted to clarifying the goals. Okay, so the discovery or orientation session. And that's when the person would explain this to me. And then I would have to work with them to kind of identify what is your goal for our coaching partnership. And then if they say, well, by the end of the 6th semester, I want to have a clear career path already set out for me and I want to be started on it. Well, I would probably say I'm not sure that's realistic. However, let's see what kind of realistic goals we can set. Maybe one of the goals would be, and I would ask questions to kind of get a better sense of what they have considered, what they have not considered, how they've gone about these things, get a better sense so that we have a clear idea of where we're heading. So the one thing I would say is that even if the person is unaware of where they want to go, we still have to set a clear goal for the coaching partnership. So it could be by the end of the partnership, I want to have a better idea um, of the values that are going to drive me towards choosing a career, the non-negotiables in terms of the career, the things I'm looking for, and the things I'm willing to compromise on. It doesn't mean that we will, fix this problem within 6 weeks. It's a question of advancing on the problem as well.
Okay.
Am I answering your
Yes,
question?
absolutely, absolutely. It's because I have these conversations with friends and family, and someone would mention something like that. So it's always good to know exactly your approach, and for people watching or listening, they have a better understanding of how you deal with your clients. Because I'm thinking, physicians are already as busy as they are, especially post COVID, right? And so I'm thinking, why coaching? Like, did you have a
Mm.
personal experience or professional experience that made you think, you know what, I think I should get into it? Or you realized that you're already doing it, so you just wanted to, officialize it and have it as another service that you provide, not necessarily to patients, but just clients. So what led you into coaching specifically?
I think, yeah, that's a really interesting question. Actually, I don't have a good answer in the sense that it was impulsive. It was an impulsive decision. It was just one day. So I've always had a love-hate relationship with medicine.
Yeah.
I have to admit from the beginning, there are some things I really love in medicine, and there's a lot of things that I don't sit well with me. So I've been ambivalent about being a physician. I think this came out of that ambivalence one day. I just said, there's something else for me. There's something else, and I can't even tell you why coaching came to mind. I'd heard about it, I knew about it, but I had not been coached at that point. But it seemed to fit with my principles, and my principles are that you are the expert in your life. I am not the expert in your life. That's a really core principle for me. So coaching really fit with that. So I think that's how it was impulsive, I have to admit.
I mean, impulsive, but at the same time, it's something that you've known about, you've thought about, and it just also resonated with your standards and, how you wanted to just approach, I don't know, maybe problem solving is not the right word, or just taking care of a patient or people, right?
Mhm.
And at
Mhm.
that point in your life, I'm just trying to understand, where you were at in your career. You said that you had, two-way relationship with your profession, but at that point in your career, that were you at a point where you were thinking, I'm too burnt out, or I need a career change? I think you mentioned something, you're having thoughts, but I'd just like to understand, like, your frame of mind at a time where you, even though it was impulsive, but what was Dr. Dergazarian thinking about? Where was her mind at the time where she thought, you know what, I'm gonna pull the trigger? Because it's also a big jump, right? Because you have to shift your practice a little bit, which we'll get into
Mhm.
a little bit later. But what can you, if you remember, what your frame of mind was at that point where you made the switch?
Yes. Um Again, like, interesting question of like really going in um to understand. So this was actually only 2.5 years ago, right? It's not like I did this 10 years ago or anything.
Yeah,
So it was 2.5 years ago. Was working part-time as well, but because of the pandemic, I had increased my frequency of seeing patients, or of the number of patients I was seeing. I also had my children at the time when the pandemic started were 4 and 2. It was extremely challenging, and I was going towards burnout. So my family physician told me to take time off work. Otherwise, I would pass the point of no return in
yeah,
a way.
yeah,
That's a dramatic way of putting it, but
yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
she made it clear that I needed to stop. So I actually took only 2 weeks off work, which in retrospect was probably not the best plan. I should have taken more, but I took 2 weeks off work. I felt better. I came back with a plan of reduced workload, more self-compassion, like understanding that with young kids, you only have so many hours in a day where you can work because then the other shift starts and so that's takes a lot of your energy when you're taking care of the kids. So I came back with a new perspective that I was expecting too much of myself and also an understanding of systemic issues, right? So I was doing a lot of Parkinson's and dementia at the time at the clinic and without any support. No nurses, no social workers, no OTPT. And so it was too much for a single physician. So kind of a better understanding of how um, lack of systemic issues were contributing to this, but also taking control of my schedule. And after I went back to work, I was in a good place. And that's why it surprised me. But it just, this idea, I don't know how to tell you, it surfaced. I was in a good frame of mind. I was satisfied with the changes I was making in my work. I felt like things were I felt more in control of my schedule, of my clinical duties, and the idea surfaced.
Nice. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's great because you said it's. I'm still thinking about the fact that you said it was impulsive, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem like a just someone who is very thorough and takes their time to make the decisions and plans for stuff, right? As opposed to
Hmm.
people who just jump in head first. I tend to do that a lot and just deal with the consequences later, in my personal life, I should say. But just in terms of the impulsivity, I think it's fair to say that that's one of the first times that you've made a big career shift or a big shift in your life that it's not normally how you go about approaching changes, right?
Right. And I guess I also call it impulsive because just exactly for the same reason you said, I wasn't thinking about the consequences. So I just thought sounds like it's what it fit, like you said, it resonates with me and I just want to do this. I wasn't thinking about how I'm going to get clients, what it's going to be like to have a business. What does this mean financially? Nothing. Just following the goal and, going for it. I think that's what I mean by impulsive.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, and now you said it. So you're running a business, right? So you're a
Hmm.
physician, entrepreneur, which always fascinates me because I find that physicians who run their own business or their own clinic, whatever it is, and some have side gigs, their approach to problem solving is usually slightly different because you need to also have the business mindset, to be profitable. I mean, it's going from taking care of patients and being in the public system. The patients don't normally pay for their visits, right? It's
Hmm.
all through the RAMQ. And then shifting to having a private practice where you see physicians and non-physicians. What's been like the biggest challenge for you when it comes to that kind of shift? Is it just, hey, I have a hard time charging people because I'm just used to taking care of, you still have that mentality of taking care of my clients or patients?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Uzziel. So it's a learning curve, really. It's less uncomfortable, but it remains uncomfortable. As you said, we have, as physicians, zero practice in requesting money for services, So now you're requesting money for services. And it is difficult, but the truth is, yeah, yes, it's a learning curve, like I
Yeah.
said, My husband is an engineer, but he manages teams essentially, and he did his MBA. So he's also been coaching me on that, like, I mean, coaching as a general term, but, about those aspects of business. But I mean, it's not natural for me, certainly.
And just looking back, would you approach diving into, starting your coaching business differently? Would you
Mm.
maybe write up a business plan or, get more advice or seek out other coaches that have been in the industry for much longer, whatever it is? Is there an approach that's something that you would have done differently in terms of that shift?
The truth is, I think if I had known all of this, I wouldn't have dived. So I'm glad I didn't. Um, and because sometimes the more you know, the more you see the risk, and someone like me would be less like interested perhaps in taking that risk.
Yes.
But if what I would have done differently is I would have taken setting objectives much more clearly. I would have set goals for my business instead of just having them vaguely in my head. I would have actually done more formal goal setting and be more accountable towards myself in terms of achieving those goals with respect to the coaching. The thing is, work, even if I work part-time, I also have kids, so a lot of things take up time, and so the coaching is the one that usually gets the least attention. It's hard to, when I have charts to finish or results to look at, it's hard to say, no, I'm going to spend that time on marketing or creating a business plan. That's the difficulty. So the balance, but you see, it's taken 2 years, and now I really feel okay. Now I've come to the maturity to realize that, okay, I'm going to do this. And now I'm setting my goals actually. So that's certainly has been also a learning curve, but I don't regret having done this, jumped into it the way I did.
There's something really powerful about what you just said, where if you knew how difficult it would have been to just run a business and do what being a mom and also being a physician at the same time, you wouldn't have jumped just because it's scary, right? It's tough. I think there's something really powerful about that because that's most of us, right? If you get stuck in that phase of a lot of analysis as to what the potential consequences are and talk to too many people, you get stuck in that frame of mind, and you never get to pull the trigger, as they say. And I think it's something that I resonate with as well, because recently I just went full time on my consulting business. So it's why I said before that I like to jump head first, because if you just spend time trying to overanalyze, you're never gonna do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Precisely. The other thing, which you may have learned already, is that when you jump, probably the problems you face are very different from the problems you thought you were going to face, right?
Yes.
And then it comes to the mindset of growth. Okay, but well, actually, that's not really the right term. It's seeing it as opportunities versus problems, right? But of course, it has to be, again, a viable option to you in terms of the whole context of your life, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Did you, I mean, do you have any experience with any of your clients that, without again giving any details, where they came in with a problem, or a goal they were trying to achieve, or trying to set a goal, and you took them through the process and they were able to get out of the other end happy or with much clarity? Without getting into it too much, do you have any client that you're able to share vaguely what your experience was with them?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a few that come to mind, but there's one that comes to mind in particular. There was something that was making her unsettled about her residency practice. She was in family medicine, and she was like, so I'm going to end soon. Like I'm going to end in a month or whatever, and I need to like set up my practice, but I don't know what to do, and I need help to kind of figure out what I want to do and how I want to set this up. And actually, it turns out that through the questioning, and I also did something called somatic coaching, but irrespective, using some coaching tools, the came out that actually she wants to do a completely different specialty.
Okay.
And that's when she kind of had this like realization that, oh my gosh, what I really want to do is actually anesthesia. And so, in wanting to solve one problem, we realized that the problem was a completely different one, and we found the solution to the core problem. I have another example where someone wanted to do the coaching to boost their confidence. Again, by working through it, we realized that what was reducing her confidence or sucking her confidence was a decision about an upcoming job change.
Yeah.
And she realized, actually, I don't want to do that. I was just doing it, but I don't want to do it. And then when she realized that, she was able to come back on up on her feet.
Okay.
So those are some examples. Some very simple examples are, as a manager, I want to improve my level of comfort with having difficult conversations, knowing full well that no one is ever comfortable with difficult conversations.
Right.
And so we work in the sessions usually to prepare for an upcoming difficult conversation. And so, we work on it, and then the feedback is, well, actually, that went much better than expected. We were able to each express our goals and whatever. So, that's a small example, but an example of how coaching can turn a problem into an opportunity.
So if we take like the confidence scenario, right? So someone comes to you and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I lead a team of, or I run my own business, and I have a couple of team members. I have 10 employees, and just addressing problems head on. Sometimes I have a hard time doing that, or I have a hard time with just public speaking because I know I'm not so confident about myself." Are you able to share some of the tools or approaches that you would use to be able to bring them from someone who is, not confident to just a notch more confident?
Yeah, so I think to begin with, I would say there's a few things that are going through my mind, but one thing I want to say is that I'm not bringing them to that level. They are bringing themselves,
So,
and I am right. They're bringing themselves to that level. And as a coach, I'm there to facilitate that. So the premise of coaching, and this is my mentor coach who had taught me this, is that, and I love it, every client is smart, creative, and resourceful. So when you come into coaching with me, that is my assumption about you. You are smart, creative, and resourceful. And what's happening is that you're blocked, and we try to remove those blockages. So in terms of tools, I always, of course I have to, but it's the best thing. I fall back on my coaching framework. What is it that you want to talk about? Today, I want to talk about the fact that I have a presentation coming up in 2 weeks. I usually get very anxious and don't sleep for 7 days before. I want it to be different this time. Okay, so what is meaningful to you about speaking well publicly? So, kind of trying to understand, what are the motivators for speaking well? What will it bring to you to speak well? What does it look like if you're successful at speaking well? It doesn't mean necessarily that I'm getting a standing ovation. It may mean, well, if I can get sleep the days before my speech, that would be amazing. I have no clue what success looks like for them. I have to figure it out. Okay, so these are the coaching tools I use. That's what I mean by, everyone is unique, and also that the person is the expert in their own life. So I cannot define what success is for them. We work through the topic to find what success looks like. And then from there, we say, so the idea is, okay, so we have, let's say, 30 minutes left to our session or whatever. What is it that you want to walk away with from our session? I want to walk away with a mantra I'm going to tell myself at night when I go to bed so that I don't ruminate. Or I want to come up with an exercise plan that I can do in the 7 days before that's going to make me so exhausted I'm going to sleep. It can be anything. I have no clue what it is. So, based on the questions, things like open up in their minds and they can come up with their own solutions.
yeah.
Your question was, what tools do you use? My best answer is, I use my coaching framework and I take it from there.
Yeah, no, it just triggers a few thoughts because I know athletes use, the top athletes use visualization, right, as a tool for achieving a goal or just being the best. You mentioned that you usually ask them, part of your framework is also just asking the client, what does success look like for you in 5 years
Mhm.
or 2 days or tonight or after this session? What goal would you want to have achieved? And so just saying, what does success look like for you? It forces me as a client to think about really what matters to me in terms of achieving this goal. Is it, do I want to buy the Lambo, or do I want to go on trips, or do I just want to be live a more balanced life or happier, or whatever happiness means? So visualization. So what do you think about visualization when it comes to achieving a goal? Like, do you think that it's overhyped or underrated? Because that's something that I'm personally trying to incorporate with my process or systems of trying to get to my goals. So visualization. Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
So, a couple of things. First of all, not everyone is able to see what the success will look like. And so I think, first of all, that can be very telling. So when they are unable to see, then I need to use other questions and we need to find out what's blocking them or what's making them stuck. Okay. Um, like my first answer is it's not going to work for everyone. It depends on where you are at with respect to this topic, with respect to your goal. When it works, I think it can be very powerful to, again, like to kind of unblock what is it you're really looking for? Okay, a lot of us think we're looking for power, money, this and that, but actually sometimes success will look like just want to have less of a weight on my shoulders. I want to be lighter. It's not these things that you think you're aiming for. So it can unblock and clarify what it is truly you're looking for. So then you can actually go towards it. Sometimes, I don't know if I'm making myself clear. Sometimes we have these ideas of what success is, but if we've never asked ourselves, we're trying to run towards the wrong goal. So I think visualization in that sense can really help like get rid of that fog and say, oh my gosh, this is what I'm looking for. And now I can think about the way to get there. If you're just using visualization as wishful thinking, I'm not sure that's powerful.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't use I don't think that's the way people receive it in the coaching as wishful thinking. I think it's received as I'm going to put myself in that position and I'm going to look around and see what it looks like and how I feel. I don't think it's wishful thinking. So I don't know if that's kind of the distinction I would make.
Okay. Yeah, no, because I watch different sports from time to time, and Conor McGregor or John Jones, UFC fighters. John Jones is one of my favorite athletes, and he mentioned that he went on a spiritual journey at some point, which included a lot of visualization. And what he meant was that he had to tell himself that he is the best fighter in the world, or whatever words all these affirmations that he is the world's heavyweight champion or lightweight or middleweight. But he was placing himself at the goal that he wanted to achieve. So he was already living that goal. So so I can't even wrap my head around how impactful that is. But is that still wishful thinking?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I suppose the way you're explaining it is he's really feeling it on the inside and he's really sensing himself there.
Yes.
So I'm not sure I would call that wishful thinking. The exercise in the coaching is really, let's say I have a magic wand. Magically, all the barriers are gone, and you've achieved, to take the public speaking example, you've achieved this state of calmness to give your, public speech. How do you feel? What does that look like? So they're putting themselves in that position.
In his defense, he already knows the goal he's trying to achieve. So he technically doesn't really need coaching in that sense, right? He's
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
using these affirmations to just visualize him at the peak, and then whatever processes that goes through the brain. I'm not a medical professional here, so I can't even pretend to understand what happens there. But so it might be just out of scope of what we're talking about. But it was just something that I'm always curious about when everyone says visualization is such an effective tool to achieving your goal, and I'm like, but how?
Well, as I listen to you, one thing I'm thinking about is as long as when you're visualizing it, It's about yourself and what you can do versus I'm visualizing that people are coming to me and they're handing me contracts and so as I think maybe that's what I meant maybe by wishful thinking
Yes.
is you can't visualize what other people are going to do. The visualization has to be about yourself, right? Because that's the only thing you can control.
So can we play just a quick game here? I just want to pretend to be your client. If I'm coming to you and well, so I come to see you and I say it really. I'll just go back to I'll pick public speaking. So I really struggle with public speaking. I hate being in front of the camera. And I give a lot of talks. I do a lot of conferences where I give speeches, but I don't feel confident. I don't feel comfortable, and I want to improve my public speaking skills. But I'm not really sure how to go about that. I'm not even sure if I should be talking to you about this. So what do we need to do? Like, can you help me out?
I would normally explain to you what coaching is, okay? And then I would say, okay, so it sounds like I would assume it's your work. You didn't mention work, but I
Yes.
would assume that it's through your work that you
Yes.
need to do a lot of public speaking. And every time you have to go in front of the cameras or go in front of a large crowd, it's draining for you because you don't have the confidence, okay? And then I would try and figure out essentially a bit more of the context. So, can you tell me how long you've been doing this for?
So I've been doing it for maybe a couple of months now.
Hmm.
And I've turned down public speaking events because I just get nervous or I get stage shy, whatever the right term is. But it's just been a couple of months.
Hmm. It's just the last couple of months,
Yeah,
and you've turned down some opportunities because of this.
exactly.
So, from what I understand, this lack of confidence or this difficulty with speaking is an impediment to your career at this time.
Yes, very much so.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What got you into a position where you would have to do so much public speaking?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I'd like to be able to provide value on a bigger platform and just provide value in terms of my expertise, whether it's just advising people of the best ways to problem solve. Um, and I know that I'm not always the one to jump in front of the camera and jump in front of a crowd to speak. So I want to be able to get out of that comfort zone. So I think it's just a skill that I'm trying to build and not just limit myself from the potential opportunities.
So, the importance of this skill for you is in terms of your career development.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay, right. Is there any other meaning? What else is meaningful about you learning to develop your public speaking skill?
So for my career and confidence, I just like to be more confident and just comfortable having, having conversations with people in a public setting or just improve on that. So it's very personal to me because like I mentioned before, I've never been the type to do that. So yeah.
So, you want to develop as a person, you want to
Yeah.
improve your confidence in yourself,
Yeah.
and you also want to learn this skill, like we said, in terms of career development.
Yeah.
And we haven't spoken about it, but I'm assuming your long-term goal for your career.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
so public speaking is included in the long-term goal for your career. Okay. 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 Another question is just to clarify, is there any part of you that wants to avoid this, or are you really here and committed to working on this?
I know we're playing a scenario here, but the questions they're good. They're very introspective. So, I'm sorry. What was the question?
The question is, sometimes there's
Yeah.
something we think we want to work on and we're ready to go through the difficult whatever work it takes in order to achieve that. And sometimes when we're faced with a hurdle, we're like, you know what? I'm not ready to go through this hurdle right now. I need to shift my focus. My question is, where are you at now?
Yeah. So I'm
in
ready.
terms of facing this issue? You're ready. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. All right. So, my question to you would be, so on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being where you have whatever you imagine as being like not at all confident, and 10 being the confidence you would like to have. Okay. Where are you at now in terms of your confidence in public speaking?
Say a 4.
A 4? Okay, great. And where would you like to be?
I mean, I'd like to be on a 12 on 10 if possible, but
12 on 10. Okay. Okay, so we'll see later where how much we can move on that scale during this one session. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to ask you, so if you were to imagine yourself that where you've achieved this capacity of being confident in yourself and this comfort of being in front of cameras and in public speaking. So I want you to imagine that you've achieved that state. Okay, and I want you to tell me, what do you see? Or if that's too vague, how do you feel?
so I feel more confident. I feel comfortable to provide, maybe mentorship to other people looking to maybe do the things that I'm doing. Um,
Mm.
and I see myself being on a big stage.
Okay. And what does it feel like in your body? You're in the future, you've achieved this level of confidence. What does confidence feel like?
It feels fearless, you know,
Fearless? Okay.
fearless and not caring much about, outside opinion and, just really, I feel like it doesn't matter what anyone has to say, whether it's family or it's friends or it's people I don't know. So it feels great. It feels amazing to not care about what people's opinions are.
Okay. So what confidence looks like for you is to not care about what people think, not
Yes.
not being touched by their opinions or their comments. So that's one thing. So when you're going up on the stage in front of the cameras, you're fearless. You don't
Yeah.
care what people are going to say. You're comfortable. And what do you mean by comfortable? What does that look like?
Comfortable just meaning I could. It feels like I'm walking into a room where there's no one in,
Hmm.
or I'm walking into a room where my favorite people are. So my fiance, my family. Um, I just feel like I can be myself.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. That's
great.
it.
So, what it looks like for you when you've succeeded is that on the one hand, you're going to be fearless, going out in front of the cameras and in front of the crowds. You're not going to pay any attention to any feedback that is given. And also, you feel a sense of, I would say, security in the sense that it feels like the intentions of people towards you are like those of your family or your good friends, the ones who are listening to you,
Yes,
because you said comfort would feel like I'm talking to them, so they have good intentions towards you, so that people have good intentions towards you and are you know
yeah,
rooting for you in a way
yes,
for your success.
yeah.
Great.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we can stop right here, and you can maybe just summarize the rest of the process. But it's so fascinating, and I'm like, we could do this for hours on different topics, right? Anyway, so at that point, how would you carry the conversation, and what
Forward.
your future? Yeah, exactly, to move forward.
Right. So I always do what I just did, is that I re-summarize the vision of success, and then we move to, okay, so that's what success looks like. And then I look at the time and I say, we have this amount of time left. What is it that you want to walk away with? Okay, so usually when people have had this vision of success, sometimes they're like, well, I really don't know. It's a tough question, okay? Sometimes people are like, I don't know what I want. And then they're like, but maybe what I would want is to, and then they come up with something like,
Mhm.
I want to know a routine I go through before every public speaking that's going to remind me of what success looks like. Or, you know
Mm.
what? I'm going to practice with family and friends every single time before I go in front of the cameras so that I know that feeling of practicing with people with whom I feel safe. So it's through the questions, you know. So what do you want to walk away with? If they have trouble, try again. It's questions, questions to kind
Yeah.
of get them to,
So I have a
and then
question.
we refine the plan. Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, I keep interrupting you. But no, but so in that scenario, so it's important for the client to remember the feeling of what success means to them, or the feeling of achieving whatever goal they're trying to achieve. For this example that we're talking about, public speaking or whatever, and you just said if you have a ritual, maybe set a ritual where you feel like you always perform the speech or whatever in front of your family, and then before you go right up on stage, and then when you're on stage, you get that feeling of that comfort, or it automatically feels, maybe not automatically, but you get a sensation of you're doing it in front of people that you're comfortable with. Maybe I'm not phrasing this well, but it really also, so it partially it just comes down to how you feel about yourself and the scenario that you're in, or whatever goal you're trying to get. It's more of an emotional thing. Well, in this case.
In this case, yes, it
Mm.
doesn't have to be emotional.
Okay.
Because if it's, let's say, I don't know, I'm very inefficient in doing my tasks when I have free time, that's not an emotional, like, that won't be an emotional plan of action, right? It's going to be a very, like, concrete type of thing. But I think how I would summarize what you're saying is more, it all depends on you and your perspective, and it's not about others, it's about you, right? So you're not going to be changing how many people are in the room. You can't change which contracts come your way,
Yeah.
but you can change the way you interact, the way you react to what's coming your way.
Okay. So, if we shift towards physicians, my
Hmm.
clients are predominantly
Yeah.
physicians, physicians like yourself. But going back to that scenario, I think it was excellent. It gave me like a very fresh perspective of how you approach your client. You have some physicians that are struggling with burnout or approaching burnout, and some of them I usually just, when I implement and improve their workflow by implementing certain tools, whether it's AI, whether it's just optimizing the way they use their EMR, that helps and they feel less stress in that particular aspect. Maybe there's more personal stuff. But you have physicians that also have the imposter
Hmm.
syndrome. And so, do you have any strategies or mindset shifts that you can throw out there for physicians that who struggle with burnout and are not sure what to do, or they feel like they're approaching burnout, and or they just feel like they've never fit in with their peers, whatever it is, but physicians who are in that frame of mind, do you have any tools that can help them in terms of mindset?
Again, a very good question. I'm going to throw something out there, but I think it again comes down to recognizing the power that you have over your own life. And yes, there are multiple systemic contributors to burnout,
Yeah.
multiple, but there are things that are in your power as an individual to do. There are changes that you can make in order to help yourself. And I think that would be the major shift that I would recommend. Is a lot of us just think the system is never going to change.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about it. I just have to go and do this and get up every day and do this. It's either that or I leave my job. I quit. I think you know, there's there's other ways of viewing it. And but the power is with you have to want to change things. Okay? It's not the change is not going to happen for you.
Right? So it's hard to just give overall advice, but just looking at it from a physician who went through coaching yourself or had
Hmm.
mentors and was heading towards burnout. Just from your own personal experience, if you could say, from my personal experience, you don't have to worry about coming to sign up with me as a coach. My services are always there. But here are two or three things that I did that helped me cope. Maybe one of them being taking time off, right? 2 weeks, but
Mhm.
maybe I would have loved to
Mhm.
take 6 months. I mean, you're a consultant, so if you take off time, so you don't get paid. But you take one of the tools out of the three is take some time off. Is what you did that help you
Mhm.
get some mentors or get a coach because you also did that, right? So I don't know if I'm
Mhm.
saying the like the top three things to do, but in your perspective, from your personal experience, would you be able to name like a few things, that just to say, you know what, I went through it. If I were you, I would try these things.
Absolutely. So we're talking about burnout?
Yeah, yeah. A
Yeah?
physician who is
Okay. Yeah. On the verge of burnout. Okay, definitely. So my number one is speak to someone you trust. So whether it's your best friend, it's your spouse, or if you have no one you think you can speak to, reach out, whether it's to the Quebec Physicians Help Program, or I mentioned earlier there's Physicians Anonymous. The whole point is that it's anonymous and there are support groups. So do not isolate yourself. Number one. Well, actually, that would be number one, two, and three, but let's just put, okay, so do not isolate yourself. Speak out, talk to someone you trust or to many people you trust. Number two, get informed on burnout. There are fantastic articles out there that are easily accessible. If I'm not mistaken, there's one by Dyke Drummond. It's a three-part burnout article, and it's written by a physician for physicians. So I would inform myself again to know that I'm not alone, that this exists and it's not a failure. And number three is it's also part of the three series article I mentioned, but is to when you feel capable of doing it, start implementing changes in your life. So you have to identify the areas that you need to change and then implement change. Now, maybe between talking, getting informed, and implementing change, you're going to need to take some time off because you may no longer have the energy
okay.
you may no longer have what I call internal resources. Maybe your internal fuel is empty, your fuel tank is empty, and you can't implement change. So you need to take time off, regain some energy so you can implement change.
Amazing.
That would be my top three.
And I think that just applies to any profession, right? It doesn't matter if you're a physician or whatever professional you are. It is solid advice. Is this just physicians feeling the burnout and so on? I think it's something that has been talked about more and more, or I'm more exposed to it now because I'm trying to solve my way of solving, contributing to lessening physician burnout is by implementing AI scribe, for example, so that the physicians can spend less time writing notes and just have the AI document the visit and produce sub notes or using templates or whatever it is, So that's how I contribute. But is it a subject that physicians are not so comfortable, or health professionals are not too comfortable talking about it publicly or with their peers? Maybe you only realize, oh man, my colleague Dr. X took some time off. I did not realize that they were burning out or they were heading in that direction because they wouldn't mention anything, right? So just like many professions, people tend to act that way. I'm guessing that it's similar for physicians too, where they feel that way. But if they don't do some of the things that you mentioned, as in, figuring out what you really want, taking some time off, talking to someone. Anyway, so I'm going off the rail here, but my question really is this a subject, physician burnout, or fears of burnout? Is that something that is widely discussed, with openly discussed amongst physicians, or is just you don't want to show a sign of weakness, if I could put it in those terms?
Yeah, I agree with you. So I have to say, I think there's much more discussion about it. Like you're on LinkedIn, I don't know, you may see on LinkedIn this a lot of talk about moral injury, particularly in the States, burnout, also physician suicide, right? So, which can be, downstream effect. So I think there's more talk about it maybe in certain media circles. Now, I still think that there is a taboo about it in the sense that, yes, there's this idea that physicians are superhuman, and the reason they're doing this is because they can tolerate all kinds of things without ever stopping, without having needs. So I do believe that it's still very difficult for people to accept that they're burning physicians to listen. I'm saying this based on a sense. I'm not saying that this is based on any evidence or literature, but I do believe that there's still a general difficulty in recognizing burnout in oneself because it's weakness or shameful and seeking help for it for the same reasons. I do believe, though, that the younger generations are much more aware of these things and less prone to seeing it as weakness and more open to asking for help.
Okay. Interesting. So, in terms of might sound funny, but where do you see your coaching business in 3 to 5 years from now? Do you have a vision for maybe you want to hire other coaches to work with you and just be more impactful that way, or you haven't really given it much thought because you're wearing so many different hats, right? Do you have a vision
Hmm.
for your coaching career?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
So right now, hiring other coaches is not, I'm not there yet. I do really like these leadership workshops that I'm co-facilitating, and I also really like working with physician leaders because in terms of being impactful, with physician leaders, the number of people that they can then lead well uh, is large. So I love working with individuals. That's why I do coaching. That's why, medicine is at its root a one-on-one,
Yeah.
job. So I love working with physicians, with anyone one-on-one. The idea of working with physician leaders is something that I want to work on in the next couple of years. That's where I would like to see the business go.
So you mentioned physician coaching workshops, right? So you've been doing a lot of that, and we talked about it briefly off camera. What is that? What do you do? What is that all about? I'm just curious here.
Yes, so it's actually leadership workshops, not coaching
Okay,
workshops. So
gotcha.
they're leadership workshops. So written by a coach and two physicians. And now it's the FMOQ and the FMSQ that will be providing these workshops. And essentially, it's for physicians to learn leadership skills because it's not something that's taught at all in medical school or in residency. And a lot of physicians will hold leadership positions. And so I take on the role of the coach in these workshops, and then there's the physician who gives more of the medical information in these workshops. And so I'm not doing group coaching. However, there are different exercises where I do give feedback with a coaching posture, but it's more of a workshop in the sense that the people come, there's a bit of theory, but there's a lot of exercises, and they actually get credits for it. So it's like all around, I think everyone gains from it.
Do you think that students, medical students or residents, should be exposed to such workshops more? Because I'm thinking, I have a cousin who she's a med student, and she is a little introverted, but she does okay. She dances and so on, so she expresses herself in different ways. But I'm thinking for someone like her, she's still early on in her career as a medical professional. Should she be thinking about that? Because
It's
you
so interesting.
yeah. Yeah, because you don't know if you want to be a leader or not until you're maybe put in that position, and then you're like, I fight or flight, right? To put in lame terms. But yeah, as a medical student or resident or physician in their early career, should they be thinking about that? Is it something that should be added to the curriculum more?
Really interesting question, Uzziel, actually. So I think the skills you learn in leadership are skills that will help you in all aspects of your work. And so the idea of leadership is not that you are have authority or hierarchy over someone. It's that you are an agent of influence and change in your circle. You can be an agent of influence and change within a group of medical students, right? So that's leadership. Now, certainly at a resident level, I think it's important because residents, even in R1 level, will have medical students, on their team that they have to, in a sense, usually I would call it more mentor. but still having leaders, the skills of leadership, so of mentoring them well, I think, are very relevant. So I think the idea for residents came to me, but medical students, I think that's a really interesting thing. So planting the seeds early, maybe they don't wouldn't need an intense like
Yeah.
workshop in leadership, but kind of planting these seeds of actually what it means to have a leadership mindset, and to understand that even if that leadership is very different from hierarchy, right? And authority and leadership are not the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's a big misconception there. I attended a conference once with the former CEO of Cirque du Soleil, and I had asked him a question about leadership. So I was just asking him, so what's your best advice for someone who's aspiring to be a leader? And some of the things he said was that if you're in the business of solving complex problems, and solve them really well and provide value to people, and it would happen automatically. Your peers are going to start coming to you for guidance or advice or whatever. Clients are going to come to you for the same thing. So that was his approach. Like, find something, do it, and do it really well. And
Hmm.
you just kind of fit into that leadership role in that niche, right? I don't know if that's something
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
agree to, but what do you think about that?
I 100% agree with the principle that whatever you apply yourself to, you should do it well. I 100% agree with that principle. And yes, when you do something well, eventually people come to you because they recognize the quality. I mean, yes, yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned some books that you recommend, or articles that physicians can read or health professionals can read. Do you have any other resources that people can look up in terms of just helping them understand what they want, or if they're struggling with burnout, without having to go see a coach, a therapist, a psychiatrist?
So for people who don't want to necessarily reach out to you know, a help program, I find that the Canadian Medical Association Wellness Hub actually has a lot of information, good quality information. There's also, as an aside, there's information on coaching there too, and they have links to coaches. Well, an organization that provides coaches. So, in terms of burnout and wellness, I would say start with the Canadian Medical Association because it will be very physician specific. Um, Now, other beyond that, there are so many books, and I feel like when I recommend a book to a client, it will really be because I feel, okay, like this person, I think this book would work for them.
Okay.
So it's kind of a very unique.
Yeah. What about leadership?
I'm quickly trying to think. How about leadership? Well, oh my gosh. Well, so I think a must read is Crucial Conversations and Crucial Confrontations. So, Crucial Conversations is essentially how to have difficult conversations when the stakes are high, which, happens often, I think, in leadership. It can also happen like in physician leader positions, uh, but I mean, I think it helps you in all walks of life. Crucial confrontations is essentially when they're not doing what they promised you, and so how to have those conversations. So to confront someone. Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, I think I don't know if it's a classic, but Brene Brown is all over the place, but Dare to Lead. There's Robert E. Quinn, Quinn, Quinn.
Okay.
He has written multiple books that are very good. And then there's Patrick Lencioni. Yeah, so those are more specific books about how to carry out meetings, the dysfunctions in a team, and that kind of stuff. Viktor Frankl, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff and It's All Small Stuff is again a classic from the 90s, but I don't think it ever grows old. Mhm. I was just going to say nonviolent communication, but that again is not for burnout only. That's for
Yeah.
any form of communication. So Marshall Rosenberg and yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Hmm.
Interesting. But for people who absolutely do need, I have a feeling. Well, after doing that quick exercise with you, I think everyone in that state of frame of mind should get a coach and just go through those steps. Whether you go through the full program or not, but you need some level of clarity as to how to move forward. So, where can they find you? So I know you have a LinkedIn page, which I'm gonna
Right.
add. I'm gonna add to my show note. Can we find you on Instagram, YouTube? Where can we find you? A website?
Not yet.
Okay.
Would be my answer right now. So right now I'm on LinkedIn. A lot of the referrals come through email, actually, because I've given my email to certain organizations. I can, it's a big, it's my essentially Sandra.Dergazarian@gmail.com, but I would have to spell that out for you. I'm working on a website. It's like half up. It's DR, so doctor.
Okay.
If you go on there, you can essentially send me an email, or I think you can even book directly just an information session.
Okay. Interesting.
Those would
Interesting.
be the ways.
Okay. And for someone, a physician who is thinking, you know what, I listened to this and it sounds really interesting, and this is my moment. This is my light bulb moment to get into coaching. So, what advice would you give them for just a physician who is looking to get into coaching, like becoming a coach? What do they need to take? Courses, certification?
Yes. So for someone looking, for a physician looking to get into coaching, if you look online, there are multiple schools of coaching. There are weekend programs, there are week-long programs. So I would really encourage you to do your research and find out the quality of the coaching. I did my coaching program at Concordia University with the John Molson Executive Center. So it was a 9-month program, very hands-on. I thought it was fantastic. So maybe that's too much for some people, but you can start. My mentor, she said she started with a weekend course and that's just over the years grew and grew and grew her experience from there.
Mhm.
In terms of things you absolutely want to check out is the International Coaching Federation website. So they are the if you want, the governing body for coaches. And so they have both resources for people who want to be coached, but also for people looking to go into coaching or who are already coaching. So I would encourage you to go to study with a school that actually has ICF accreditation. Talk to coaches, talk to
Right.
people who are in your field, who have become coaches, or who are coaching in the field you would like to coach in. Definitely get a sense, but don't let that necessarily hold you back if
Yeah.
this is what you want.
Right. My last question, I promise. Have you noticed? I don't know if you've had the moment to just look back because you're doing so much, so maybe you haven't. But the moment to just look back and say, "Wow, like I've come a long way from the version Dr. Sandra 2.5 years ago compared to you right now." Like, have you noticed any change, whether it's just mindset wise or the way you approach life or the way you practice medicine or coaching or just taking care of your kid and spouse, like in any aspect of your life? Do you notice? I can give you one of mine. I think ever since I went full time into my business, running my business or launching it, I've become probably more irrational than I used to be, just because there's so many hats to wear. But at the same time, I'm starting to get all these different tools and habits that help me just be able to manage my team and provide value to my clients. So that irrationality is one thing, but being able to my problem solving skills has tripled exponentially just being in my field for the last 3 years. So that's a positive. So I don't know if you have any that you're able to share.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic what you're saying, problem solving skills. Like when you're talking about it, it's like you're all excited. It's really nice to see. It's true. So for me, yes, I would say so. First of all, at work, I do bring more of a coaching mindset when I'm with patients, particularly when, in medicine, there's uncertainty sometimes, like actually a lot of times. And so when there's uncertainty, I use more of a coaching mindset to see, well, where does the patient want to go? I'm not going to dictate the things here, especially when it can go either way.
Yeah.
So, and also in the interview, using more of a coaching approach, open-ended questions, essentially. Number one. Number two, I do find that with my kids, the things I've learned through coaching and through reading and teaching leadership skills essentially is how to have difficult conversations. There's always conflict between the kids, like brother, sister, they're always arguing. So conflict management, having difficult conversations, definitely.
Yes.
And just in general, I would say creativity. So rather than, and I don't know if that resonates with you
Yeah.
as well, but right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because you're wearing different hats and you have to apply different solutions in different places, but then it allows you to think outside of the box and bring creativity to new areas in your life. And so definitely,
Yeah.
that's what I
Yeah.
would say. Yeah.
Interesting. So thank you very much for just being able to be here today for us to have this conversation. I think, hopefully the next time we meet would be more so in an in-person setting, because I'm looking to set up a studio to have this type of conversation. So be we could have a scotch or just have coffee, whichever works. But thank you very much for joining me today. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Uzziel, so much for this really fun conversation and opportunity to chat. And congratulations on all your efforts.